This video is part 2 of planning a project for woodworking. We began part 1 by finding a picture of something that we want to build, utilizing the measurements that were given or what few measurements were given, and generating a basic sketch with our modified measurements for what we want. In this video, we are going to take our basic sketch and we're going to create a parts list of every single piece and part that we need to build this project. So we will start by taking a look at the project and having our parts list out. And we're going to add some information. So let's start with the left and right side of the project. With each component, we are going to label everything. We also need a quantity. So we have a number. Now the label does not necessarily matter as long as you can remember what that part is associated with. The thickness, this is going to be 3/4 of an inch plywood is what we're using for this project. The width measurement, that's how wide it is. We have 14¼ inches. The length measurement, we will put a dimension on here. Now again, if you drew this up on graph paper, an easy way to do this is 1 square equals 1 inch. So we have a length of 47¼ . And the material for this is going to be a veneer plywood. And that could be oak or birch or whatever type of material you are choosing to build this out of. So our left and right sides are done. Let's do the face frame next. Again, we can add a couple dimensions here. We know that this is 2 inches. And we have a length of 47¼ . There's 2 of those. So we have 2 styles. This will be 3/4 of an inch material. Actually, let's make the face frame just a hair thicker. Let's make it 13/16 of an inch. 3/4 would be sufficient, but our lumber comes 15/16 typically, and if we can leave it just a hair thicker, a lot of times that gives us a little bit extra play as we're building the project. If we need to do some extra sanding, or if we do get a bad piece, we can always bring it down to that 3/4 inch measurement. But let's do 13/16. I think that'll still look very nice. The width of the style is 2 inches. The length is 47¼ . The material is going to be solid lumber. Now this could be oak or cottonwood or birch or maple or walnut or whatever type of material you're building this out of. The rails, we have a top rail and we have a bottom kick plate rail. So we have 1 top rail. Now that rail has to be the same thickness as the style. So we're going to do 13/16. We have a 2-inch measurement here, and our length is 26 inches. So our width is 2 inches, and our length is 26 inches. Now, when you are building this, you will want to leave this to a little bit of a rough measurement, something a little bit longer than 26. If you're first installing the stiles and then adding this piece, you can just cut it down to fit in between those stiles. So just keep that in mind, that these values that we are putting are more so for the purpose of calculating the cost and the amount of lumber that we need than it is maybe 100% exactly what it is while we are building the project. That'll be solid lumber. So that is top rail. And we have our bottom kick plate rail. Again, same thickness, 13/16. Our width is 4 inches. And our length should be the same as it was above, 26 inches. Solid lumber. All right, so that takes care of the face frame and the left side and the right side. Let's go ahead and do the drawer fronts. So the drawer fronts are 27 by 8 1/4. And we need 5 of them. And these I am going to have 3/4 of an inch. The width is 8 1/4. The length is 27 inches. And that's solid lumber. So that takes care of all of my drawer fronts. Then I have my top. One top. For this one, we're going to try to make this just a hair thicker. Again, the top of the project, it is what takes a lot of the wear and tear over the years. You set stuff on it, you drag stuff off, it gets scratched. If we leave it just a little bit thicker, then in 20, 30 years down the road, we can sand down the top and refinish it and still have plenty of material to work with. The width of that top is 16 inches. And the length is 32 inches. That's solid lumber. Again, it could be oak, could be maple, walnut, cherry, cottonwood, whatever it may be. Then we have the back of the project. If I sketch out the back of the project, we'll throw a couple dimensions just so this is clear. The overall project here is 30 by 47 1/4. So if I go 30, 47 1/4, and I add my top with a 1-inch overhang. I'm going to add the thickness of my sides. Now I don't actually have anything on the back of my project at the bottom. This whole thing is kind of open. So what I would like to do is, given that I have a kind of this front kick plate, I think I'd like to put one of those on the back as a support to help hold those sides together. So I'm going to add an additional piece back here, and we're going to call this bottom rear lateral support. So it's on the bottom, in the back, lateral, it goes across, it's going to support the sides. I think we could get away with that being 13/16 as well. We'll throw a couple dimensions on here. (28.5) by 4. And this could be solid lumber, or it could be plywood. It's in the back, nobody sees it. It's just used to hold the sides together. If we had some plywood left, which I don't know because we haven't calculated that yet, we could use it for that. We could technically even have the grain pattern going the wrong way because it is in the back where nobody sees it. So we'll just make a note of that it could be either of those. So then we have our back piece. Now the back piece is going to be routered in here. We're going to run a rabbet. And again, you wouldn't necessarily have to have a back. If you wanted to cut some costs, you could ditch the back and just have it open because this project is sitting up against a wall. So we're going to come in here 3/8 of an inch, and that's going to account for our rabbet. We'll rabbet into this bottom piece, and that gives us something to connect that to. The other thing we could do is just run it to the back and have this bottom rear lateral support sit in 1/4 of an inch. However, since we are routering this anyways, it doesn't hurt just to router it into here necessarily. Nobody sees it, it's in the back anyways. Run this piece up to the top here. And we could do a top rail in the back as well. That'd be something to think about. Essentially, you're doing the same thing on the bottom, but up here at the top. I don't necessarily think that's necessary, although, come to think of it, one thing that I do like to do is, if we have this piece up here, so I'll add it in here. So if we add, say, a 2-inch piece, which is essentially like another rail but in the back, if we add that in and we were to bring this down, it does a couple things for us. Bring this down here. What it does is during the build process, we don't necessarily have to have the top on, but we can use this kind of lateral connector to help hold the sides in place. Number two, it does give us something to adhere that back piece to, but also we could actually use that lateral connector piece to bolt this project to the wall. And that's one thing I do like to add to a lot of projects, especially if this project is built for someone with small kids, where you can take the top drawer out, reach in there, and bolt it through the wall, bolt it to the wall through that lateral connector piece, and just have a very secure project that's not going to tip over on a kid or something like that. So I think we're going to go with that. So we're going to do one, and we're going to call this top rear lateral support. And given that it's 2 inches, it should not affect the drawer, because the drawer should sit below that, since we have that trim in the front, that face frame in the front. So this is going to be 2 inches, and we're going to have a length of the same of 28.5 inches. And again, this could be lumber or plywood. All right. So then we should be able to measure out our back. So we have one back, and again, the back is not 100% necessary because this is up against a wall. But this would be 1/4 inch veneer plywood, or you could use like a masonite or a MDF or some type of 1/4 inch backing material. I like to use the veneer plywood, it's just my preference. And let's throw a couple of measurements on here. And again, if you were using graph paper, you could just count the squares. It'd take a little bit longer, but that would be suitable. So we have 42 long by 29.25 wide. And when you would go to install this on your project, you would want to double check those measurements, because sometimes instead of 29.25, it might be a 1/16 less or a 1/16 more. And so you can make those adjustments as you build the project. But again, for the purpose of calculating, we want the actual perfect measurements if this were a perfect world with a perfect cut and no errors and no mistakes on the project. So this is all the materials for the outside of the project. Now we need to think about the drawers. And for the drawers, we're going to do very simple drawers with butt joints and nothing too crazy, okay? Because we're just doing a sample, kind of a simple sample project. So if I take my drawer opening, so let me turn off the drawer fronts here. If I take my drawer opening of 26 inches, that is my width measurement. So drawer opening equals 26 inches. Okay, and now we need to attempt to calculate how big each of the drawers are going to be. So I'm going to turn these drawer fronts back on, and I want all of the drawers to be the same size. My drawer guide, or the drawer slide, is a 1/2 inch that I need to accommodate for. On either side. Now, if we had face frame between these drawers, I think it would make it easier for us to visualize. So I'm going to draw a couple lines here. So we're going to pretend that we have 2-inch face frame between the drawers. So I'm going to offset this line like so. Okay, I'm going to turn off these drawers. So essentially, this is the height of my drawer-ish. If I measure this, my drawer is 6 7/8 inches. So I know that the drawer slide can't, let's see here, we don't have a bottom, so technically that drawer slide could be sitting as low as we possibly could. We don't have to worry technically about that trim for tipping the drawer and fitting that in there. I'm thinking if we make the drawer 7 inches, we should be fine. So we'll kind of mock this up and just see what this looks like. So I'm going to get rid of, let's see here. Let's try something. So this is kind of where AutoCAD is helpful. So we're going to get rid of these, and we're going to add a new layer. This is going to be our drawer. And let's say we do this in red. And so my drawer has to come on the inside of my slides. Let's say it's 7 inches. Okay, so let's assume that that's my drawer. If I turn on my drawer front, I can kind of see where those sit. And just out of curiosity, let's take this and let's copy it in the same orientation for all of these. So the top one, I have a little bit of concern about this clearance between this top line. We have basically 1/4 of an inch, and if you are using the drawer slides with wheels, that will become problematic because you have to tip the drawer to fit in there. And so that you need at least a 1/2 inch clearance up there. And I don't think it hinders me at all to shrink the drawers a little bit, because you can always overstack your drawers just slightly. You can only overstack them as tall as the drawer right above it, so when you pull your drawer out and there's clothes, it technically would hit the drawer above it if you overstacked it too much. So I think given that this was a 1/4 inch clearance and my drawer was 7 inches, if I went 6.5 inches, so I'm going to bring this down. Tell you what, let's bring all of these down at the same time. So I brought all of those down. Trim off that little bit there. And then we will turn off our drawer fronts. We'll add a couple measurements. So my drawer slides, or my drawers, are 6.5 by 25. So those are pretty nice sized drawers. Should get good storage in that. So I'm liking that. And then we would have these little drawer slides. Let's draw those for you. Add a little bit of line thickness to those. All right. So about like that. So let's take a look, let's take a top view look of the drawer. Okay, so we know that it is 25 wide, and we know that it is a 1/2 inch thick material, or I know it is. The depth of the drawer we know can be no more than 15, but drawer slides only come in even measurements, so we're going to make the drawer 14. So we're 14 deep. And we want to make sure that the corner of the drawer is set up like this, so that when we assemble this, we're going to shoot some nails through it this way. And that will help give it additional support and security. If you were to pull the drawer front really hard, you are pulling against all these nails in this connection point. If you had this front piece on the front, it could just pull the front off sometimes. So we're going to do it like this, and go ahead and add some dimensions. So we're 14 deep. Our overall drawer opening is 25. Now the actual opening should be 26, but we have to accommodate the drawer slides, which is a 1/2 inch each, so that makes this 25. That piece is sitting on the inside, so that actually becomes 24. And we do know the height is 6.5 inches. So we're going to have, we have 5 drawers. Each drawer has a left side and a right side. So we're going to make 10. This is drawer left/right side, the thickness is a 1/2 inch material. The width of the side, that's our 6.5 inch measurement. The length of our side is 24 inches. Nope, it's actually 14 inches because we're doing the sides. 14 inches. And typically this is going to be a like a veneer plywood. We also have drawer front slash back side is what I'm going to call it. 1/2 inches or 1/2 inch thickness. The width is also 6.5 inches, and then that length is that 24 inch measurement. Veneer plywood. And looking at this 24 inch measurement concerns me a little bit because plywood comes on, it comes as an 8-foot sheet. So if you were to cut 24, 24, 24, well, you also have to consider the kerf of the blade. So each cut is actually 24 1/8. So we might have to do some figuring when we lay this out on the plywood to see if we need to make this drawer a little bit smaller. But to do that, that would then change all of our measurements in here. Or we could do some other things to space the drawer out just a little bit more, and we can do some things to finagle it and not have to redesign the entire project. But that number is a little bit of a concern just as I look at that. But we're going to roll with this for right now. So drawer left, right side, front, back side. Then we have the drawer bottom. Now the drawer bottom is cut in quarter of an inch all the way around the project. That is dadoed in. Then we'll take a dimension of that. So the bottom itself is 24.5 by 13.5. And we're going to need 5 of those. Drawer bottom. This is 1/4 inch material. Width-wise, 13.5. Lengthwise, 24.5. Veneer plywood. And that, I believe, should be every single part of this project as far as hardwood and plywood components that we would have to make. Now there will be some to attach the drawer slides to the side of the project. We will put kind of a runner that runs the full length. Essentially it would kind of look like this almost. So you'd basically just have a board running down. So your drawer slide would attach inside the face frame, and that would come back and then attach to that board, which is inside the project. That would just kind of be, could be a 2x4, could be scrap material, could be leftover plywood or whatever we would need to get that thick enough. We're not going to, we'll keep that in mind, but we're not going to add that to our price list at this point. So I think that is good for this portion of the video. We have all the parts laid out. We thought through the process. We took a look at our picture and kind of tore apart this project in our mind and figured out what size every single piece is, and then we put that information on the parts list. So we are on our way and looking pretty good.